Throughout history, every culture and age has told stories of hauntings, visitations from beyond the grave. Whatever your beliefs, what cannot be denied is that the living are outnumbered by the dead. The tales you're about to witness are created from first-hand accounts. They portray the experiences of people who had no more reason to believe in ghosts than you. Is it possible that beyond our understanding, there exists a darker world? Penwith, the most westerly part of Britain, a bleak landscape littered with ancient pagan relics. These monuments from another age have been linked to the dark arts and black magic rituals.
It was the most frightening, terrifying thing that had ever happened, and I wouldn't want it to happen again. It was just like the film Amityville Horror. It was as scary as that.
I remember it quite well. I was 8 at the time. And me, my brother, and my mum, and a couple of others, we all went to see my mum's friend Jane.
Our other friend Anna was there with her 2 children, and it was the summer holidays, so we were looking forward to having a nice weekend.
Jane's partner was away at the time, so we just thought we'd go down to keep her company.
You're it!
It was a lovely day when we got there on the Friday. It was nice and sunny, and the kids were playing outside. And we had our evening meal, and we got the children in bed, and that's when it started. There was myself, Anna and Jane in the living room, and we were watching the television. I went upstairs, had a look, and they all seemed fine, fast asleep. We weren't frightened then, we were just puzzled. When I came downstairs again, the banging got louder, so we decided, because we were getting a bit unnerved, that we'd go upstairs and we'd all get in bed together so we knew we'd all be safe. But the atmosphere in the room was very tense, and we were trying to sort of be brave because of the kids. We didn't want to scare them. Just felt like a nail scratching down my face.
It was a red mark, just down the side of her face.
It shocked me. I felt threatened by it, and I was scared for the kids. And that's when I decided we should all go back downstairs and all be in one room together. We took the duvets down with us, and we all sort of camped out in the living room for the night. But we didn't get much sleep that night, the adults anyway.
The next day we were told by the locals that people had been practising black magic in the stone circle nearby. There was proof that a fire had been lit. And we felt that might have some connection to the experiences that we went through as well.
Alarmed by stories of devil worship so close to the house, 2 of the mothers went to seek help from the local vicar.
We told him what had happened, and we were quite shocked because he took it really seriously.
That night, he came to the house to perform a blessing.
And the boy said unto the king of Israel, what have I to do with thee? And then to the prophets of thy father and to the prophets of thy mother.
We weren't laughing, but we felt like giggling because we thought, this is just mad. He's in here and he's saying these prayers and he's really taking this ever so seriously. But at the same time, it frightened us because we thought, if he's taking it seriously, maybe there is something really strange that we don't know about.
I remember being sat in the garden and seeing what past the windows. It's like really eerie.
When he'd left, we thought, oh, this is great, we can relax. but it was short-lived because what it did was make it 10 times worse.
Thanks very much. Right, okay. Yeah, well done. Right.
It started like as if someone was tapping on the window to say, look, I'm outside, can you let me in? It was as if someone had a sledgehammer and was smashing the side of the house. The whole house was shaking. It was going on for so long, I don't think anything human could actually hit something that hard without getting tired.
I could also hear banging from upstairs, and I thought I better go upstairs and check. It felt like there was something really, really evil in that room, and I felt quite threatened. And I started to say the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, forgive those who trespass against us, and deliver us from evil. The power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
It was a feeling as if you were going to be raped. That's the only way I could describe it, like as if somebody was going to rape you. And it was that scary. Because I couldn't see anything. That was the worst thing. I couldn't see anything that was doing it to me. You felt like you wanted to fight it off, but there's nothing you could have touched because there was nothing there.
We didn't sleep that night. We were really all scared. We didn't leave because it was in the middle of the moors. There wasn't anywhere that we could have gone either. The next day we just wanted to get away. We were petrified.
Jane had decided that she didn't want to stay in it. So we were packing up just what she basically needed. I said I would go upstairs and shut the window. And as I got to the window, I noticed that the palm cross had gone off the windowsill. Everything went really icy cold, and I thought, I'm scared, there's something in here. I don't think any of us would ever go back in that house. I wouldn't ever go back in it. I've been back to the outside of it and looked at it from the outside, just for curiosity, but I didn't go in it.
Fobbing, a quiet village in the heart of rural Essex.
I loved my home life situation, but just despised the building that it was in. If I was financially viable to get myself and everyone out, I would have.
It was just really like a guilty little secret, you know, and we only spoke about it between ourselves in this house.
The Williamsons had lived happily in their home for 7 years. Then, when Chris was 17, he experienced something that changed their lives forever.
But there was one particular night that's quite etched into my memory for the rest of my life. Quite terrified the life out of me, to be honest. Well, when things changed, it was like coming home to a different house. The only way I can describe it is if there was a switch on the wall, like a light switch, someone switched it on, it just sucked the atmosphere out of the room. And all of a sudden, everything just would go cold. I just thought I'd hit a funny stage in puberty, you know. I thought, oh, hang on, it's all gone a bit crazy. Things you couldn't explain would happen a lot. You'd hear bangings and you'd hear crashings.
We've done 13, this is number 13, we've done... So it's your last chance to try. Get your fingers out, try. Well, give it a go. But I've told you how many people are doing this. It's amazing. They've all got at it, you know. I mean, Bruce came on his little show the other day. Did you see him? Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Children, it's not going to ride. It's 2 hours of horse. And I was watching a magic program with Eddie's Green and so on, you know.
Came running up the stairs and was white as a sheet and tears in his eyes. He was really, really frightened.
It did feel personal. It felt like someone had put a jinx or a spell on me. And it sounds crazy, but it just felt like it was me and me alone.
After that night, Chris reported that the activity around him began to increase until he felt he was haunted on a daily basis.
It was pointless. It was like fighting an invisible man. You know, you can't hit what you can't see and you can't stop what isn't there. It was just being trapped against nothing and not being able to stop something horrible happening.
He was scared to sleep in his bedroom. He was scared to go downstairs and get a drink, you know, and scared to get up in the night and go to the toilet. Just basically scared of being here, being in the house. He didn't like it.
Soon, it wasn't only Chris who said he felt haunted at the house. His girlfriend believed she sensed something too.
I had no idea about any of the stories that had been going on because I think Chris didn't want to scare me. It was always comfortable down here. It was just upstairs that was the problem. The first time I went up the stairs by myself, I felt it straight away. It's really hard to walk forwards into his room. It was like there was just someone there. It definitely was not a nice thing in that room.
Well, Chloe didn't have to verbally tell me anything. I could look at her and I could sense that she wasn't quite content with the house. I didn't want to tell her. I didn't feel a need to tell her because maybe it would stop, but it didn't, unfortunately, as she found out.
It felt sort of angry in there.
She was actually terrified because we hadn't mentioned it to her, and it was just like, bang. She was really, really frightened.
When Chris first told me about all the stories and what he felt in this house, it all clicked into place. I completely believed him 100%. Didn't doubt a word that he said.
Although Chris and Chloe were now convinced of a presence in the house, Linda was careful to keep it from her 5-year-old son.
We didn't mention this to anybody, really, and I certainly didn't mention it to Ryan. He was just a little boy.
Well, I don't really remember people coming in and like talking about ghosts, and at the time I didn't know about ghosts, what they were, or what they even looked like. He had a strange face, some black trousers and some black boots. Well, it was so solid looking, I just thought it was a real man.
When Ryan actually mentioned it to me, I began to think, you know, that there was something more to it than I'd actually wanted to believe. And it wasn't until something happened to me, and then that was it. You know, there wasn't any doubt in my mind then. It was terrifying. It really, probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. For a brief second, I really thought I was going to die.
As Chris left his teenage years, the family say the presence began to fade away. To this day, what happened in their home remains a mystery.
It's got better. I wouldn't say it's gone away, but as we're all dealing with it together, no, it's a lot better than what it used to be.
It's 75% better now. My only concern is that Ryan is now coming up towards the age of puberty, and I do wonder that if the same thing that haunted Chris is actually going to start up again with Ryan.
Land's End, remote and desolate. This wild coast is littered with wrecks and lost souls. Many bodies have been washed up on these shores. The first and last inn. It has stood at Land's End since 1620.
We moved into the pub about 4 months ago, and we was really excited because it's been an ambition, and it was just such a nice flat. Just looking out of our windows, the views are amazing. I was really grateful to be given this opportunity. Various people told us a few things that the place was haunted, and automatically I thought, oh no, but it would never put us off working here. After we'd been here about 3 weeks, I experienced something that really confirmed it, and it's made me believe that there's something definitely up there. I was fine. I was really busy. I was doing loads of washing. I think I'd done about 8 loads that day. believe what I'd just seen. That's the only time I've seen the lady, but I feel her presence a lot. But now I've seen her, it's confirmed it, that she's up there.
Laura is not the only one who believes there is something sinister about the pub.
I've been a maintenance worker on the site for 26 years, and I've never known anybody to live upstairs and not be haunted. And they often find out the hard way. It's a very scary place.
Laura feels her experiences have been tame compared to those reported by previous tenants. Maybe because she never enters the largest bedroom. Neil and Lynn Forster lived in the pub before her, and they did.
We were both really excited. It was like first day of the rest of our lives sort of feeling.
The whole atmosphere of the place just seemed very welcoming. It felt like home the minute we walked in.
The first room we walked into was beautiful. It was just bathed in sunlight, and the sun was streaming in. It felt warm, it felt inviting. And as we went down the little corridor to the other room to have a look at, that was awful. I felt really, it was a lovely room, but I felt very uncomfortable from the minute I walked through the door.
Neil persuaded Lynn to move into the largest bedroom, a decision he says he will always regret.
The first 3 nights that we were in the room were bearable, but then on the 4th night, well, that just changed everything, and that was probably the most terrifying night of my life. I feel quite uneasy now actually talking about it. My hands have gone cold. I felt as though my arms and my legs were strapped down. Couldn't move them at all. I was freezing, absolutely freezing cold. There was nobody about. I was on my own completely. I could see the shoreline in the distance. As I was almost wrestling to try and get free, there was this woman stood, just watching, just waiting for me to die. I really believe that if Neil hadn't put the lights on, I could well have died that night, because I don't see how else anybody was going to get me out.
Lynn and Neil never slept in the largest bedroom again. Later, they were told by locals about Annie George, who ran the pub in the early 1800s and was involved with a gang of smugglers.
The man that owned the First and Last Inn and was Annie's landlord was also the head of the smuggling ring, and they had a falling out over the profits over a cargo. And she turned him into the authorities, and he stood trial in court and was jailed for a very long time.
By turning him in, Annie had effectively signed her own death warrant, and the locals exacted a gruesome revenge.
For Annie, of course, this must have been an absolutely agonising death.
When the tide receded, Annie's lifeless body was returned to her home in the First and Last Inn. She was laid out to rest in her bedroom.
She was taken somewhere and buried within the area, nobody knows where, in an unmarked grave.
Annie George died a horrific death and was never given a proper burial. And many believe that because of this, she still haunts her bedroom today.
The room upstairs is invariably always empty. People just cannot stay in there. There's just too much going on in there. It just frightens people.
It doesn't feel like my room. It feels like Annie's room, and I think it always will. It belongs to Annie.
I'd always felt in the past totally comfortable, and all of a sudden I felt really vulnerable and just out of control.
The atmosphere just changed. It felt sort of close, just uneasy and lost, you know. It's very strange.
For 100 years, this former Edwardian printworks in South London has housed generations of workers. It became a headquarters for the Freeman's Catalogue before the war, and at its peak, over 2,000 people worked here. Today, most staff have relocated.
I think this place has always been haunted. Maybe we've never noticed it so much in the past because it's been very busy here, but now the building is quieter, you sort of pick up on things.
I'd been working here 20 years before anything unusual actually happened to me. And until then, I'd always felt really comfortable. One evening, I was working late. I was on my own. I was concentrating on sending some emails through to Hong Kong and India. Just really, really doing my work and just feeling really, really okay. As I looked around, I couldn't actually see anything, but I sensed something. I just knew there was something there. I knew it wasn't right. I went out into the corridor to go to the toilets. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw a tall, very, very blonde lady in front of me. I felt like I knew her, but I didn't know her. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, if I knew her, she'd probably hold the door open for me. Well, she didn't. She looked like she'd come from the 1930s, 1940s era. I knew that she'd gone into the toilet, and I knew that she must be somewhere in there. just thought, well, how on earth have all those taps gone on at once? Because it would take somebody to have to run the whole length of the toilet to actually turn all those taps on at once. And there they were all running at the same time.
Lynn isn't the only one to have reported unusual things in the building. In fact, there is one area where few will venture. The basement was used as an air raid shelter by staff during the war, but retreating underground failed to protect some. When the building was bombed, nearly 30 people lost their lives.
The offices are eerie when no one's about, but the basement is another kettle of fish. It's very, very eerie down there.
I've worked for about 14 years as a maintenance engineer. I've worked in all sorts of places, lofts, voids, tunnels. I've been on my own, I've had to use a torch, it's been dark, but I've never experienced anything like I've experienced downstairs.
Matt has been a maintenance worker on the site for 2 years.
It's my first day at work, so I was generally feeling okay. I wasn't really thinking about much. I had not heard any of the stories that about the things that go on here. It's just literally when I walk down that sloping corridor, the atmosphere just changes. And it's just something about it that you just can't put your finger on. The feeling I got it's just anxiousness. There's something not quite right. Something that maybe would just want to turn around and walk back out of it. Something was there, and I'm not sure what it was. I was really just trying to concentrate on doing my job, just to sort of get on and do it and basically get out of the basement. Basically, the battery started going on the torch, the light was dimming, and I was shaking it, as you do, to try and get a little bit more life out of it. Then the torch completely went dead, and I was in complete darkness. When I saw it, it certainly confirmed the fact that there was something in the basement with me.
Like many of the staff at Freeman's, Matt and Lynn refuse to let their fears affect their work. But they also believe that the building could have more in store for them.
I've seen the same lady twice since, and it's exactly the same thing that happens.
I go down the basement daily to do my checks, and it still doesn't get any easier. I still feel that there's something down there with me. But I still have to go down there every day to do my job.
Bodilli Manor, over 500 years old. It stands in the Wendron district of Cornwall, land riddled with underground tunnels. This was tin mining country. Here, ivy-covered engine houses still rise above the landscape, a striking reminder of the way things used to be. Jonathan Hodgetts bought Bodilli Manor 6 years ago. For the first few months, he thought it was just like any other house.
When we moved in, we didn't sense anything particular going on. We started to tear out fireplaces, and that's when all sorts of peculiar things started to happen.
Jonathan believed that something may have been disturbed.
My brother brought this house, which we were all excited about, because it was lovely to be able to come down here and have a few days away, a nice break.
Elizabeth came to visit with her 14-year-old son Chris and his friend David.
Well, in the daytime I felt really good, relaxed, you know. Until you get to the night time, I started to feel really different.
They heard the door rattling in the bedroom and said they felt somebody or something was in the room with them.
I felt unsafe and I just didn't feel happy.
They didn't like the idea of sleeping in the house. They said they didn't like the feel of the house. It seemed to scare them. So they asked if they could sleep in the car. I said I didn't see any reason why not, if that's where they were going to feel happier.
When we got to the car, we felt relaxed, calm. We was just messing about, being stupid. Me and Dave felt scared to get out of the car. I really sensed like there's something was really out there.
Blasted, and I sort of shot up with a start. I thought, what on earth's going on? And they were just cowering on the floor in the car. They wouldn't look up to start with. They looked petrified. Their eyes were really wide open. The colour had drained from them. They were frightened to death.
I was quite shocked when this first blew up, but then thinking about it afterwards, it was beginning to build up a bit of a picture. You get some peculiar smells, smell of sort of burning fire. Often at night time, lying in bed, and you think you hear voices. We'd get up and come downstairs to turn the radio off, and it is off already.
Jonathan started to believe that perhaps the house was haunted. He contacted Trevor Kenwood from the British Ghost Club Society.
He
It informed me that there was some mysterious happenings, or appeared to be mysterious happenings, going on at Badilli. And was it possible that we could put a team together and come and do a proper investigation?
I started to give a little guided tour of the house, and then we started to do a darkness session in the dining room. There was Trevor and myself and one or two others. The whole atmosphere in the room went very cold and clammy.
The candelabra began to shake and move and rattle.
The next thing we heard was that the big heavy casters on the bottom of the table were also rattling. And we suddenly noticed that the table was rising up off the floor. And the way that people were sat around the room, it couldn't have been somebody at the table. It must have been an absolutely massive force to have lifted it on its own.
A bit later on in the evening, it was decided that the team would move into the lounge for another vigil with the lights out in the dark.
We were all just waiting and looking with anticipation to see if anything was going to happen. I remember hearing Trevor say, "Oh, look at the fireplace, something's happening." We all became aware that it was appearing as if it was a mine shaft, a very deep mine shaft.
Slowly a shape materialised, a dark form. We were convinced that it was a miner.
There is a big history of mining activity in this area, so some kind of mining link isn't particularly surprising.
The tunnels of the Bassett and Grills mine were burrowed like a labyrinth into the land around Badilli Manor. In 1858, it was the scene of a major disaster. A group of miners were working near the surface, beneath the slurry pond. An explosion ruptured the roof of the shaft with horrific consequences. Trapped underground in the darkness, there was no time to escape. They drowned in a sea of choking slurry. 7 miners died that day. Their bodies have never been recovered. Is it possible that perhaps their troubled spirits haunt Badilli Manor today?
I've reflected on what's happened quite a lot. We still sense things here and just waiting for the next experience.
It was 6 years ago. I still feel uncomfortable here at Badilli Manor.